Okay, so Hexatrek. This is the main event. I am so curious about this trail. I tracked your hike just on social with all the photos that you shared. It honestly looked like a dream.
Yeah.
Let's start off with the introduction. Like, where does it start? Where does it end? Distance, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So it is the, I guess, kind of only through hike now that goes across the entirety of France, pretty much. So it starts at the German border on the north part of France in Alsace and works its way south, hooks into Switzerland for a minute, goes through all of the Alps, down through this kind of weird gorge section, and then eventually ends at the Atlantic Ocean after going through the Pyrenees. It's 3,000 kilometers long, which is something like 1,900 miles, from what I understand.
Thank you for speaking our language.
I try to remember the conversion.
Thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, it is super diverse. There's loads of different kinds of landscapes. You technically go through 5 different countries if you're like doing all of the alternates. So you get a little bit like you're at the German border. So you start there, you go into Switzerland, you're in France, of course. You go through Andorra. You actually through hike across Andorra, which I didn't really realize was its own country until like semi-recently, which is, my North Americanness showing. And then you go through Spain for a few hundred kilometers. And then, you end in France, right close to the Spanish border.
And this was conceived recently, correct?
Yes. So this is only the second year of existence, basically.
Okay. So when I hear new trail, I think of something that is entirely underdeveloped, road walking, bushwhacking, that sort of thing, no infrastructure. Was that your experience at all?
Not at all. No. The cool thing about France in general is it has an incredible existing trail system. Like they've done a really beautiful job. Like all the GR trails, I think they're pretty like world famous at this point.
Yeah.
So the Hexatrek makes use of existing trails and has connected them in a sort of unique way to make a through hike of its entirety.
I was going to ask how much of this overlaps with the GR5, I believe.
Yeah, so a big chunk of the GR5 you do a big chunk of the GR10, and then I think the GR54 you do almost the whole thing. So it's a good combination of those mixed with other sort of lesser known trails and other like local pieces and a little bit of road walking, but I'd say maybe 5% of it was road walking, which is pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Is it Hexatreks because it's these 6 different stages?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hex is 6, right? It's hexagon.
So France itself is kind of in a 6-sided hexagonal shape. So they call it the hexagon as like a nickname. So France is shaped that way, and it's also divided into 6 stages. So yes, the Hexatrek, it's the six hike.
You also mentioned that you speak a little bit of French. Was that in preparation for this hike? You learning on the hike or a combination?
Both.
Yeah.
So I, did a pretty shoddy job of like trying to learn some French before I went. I spent a month listening to like French audio tapes or like, audio lessons. I guess we don't use tapes, but, and then on trail, that's where my French really started to get better. My comprehension of French got so much better, and I hiked with a lot of French hikers, and thankfully they were kind enough to mostly speak English most of the time. But it also, we're doing life in French, which is nice. So you go into a town, you speak French with everyone. So I got pretty good at like the hiking words and like how to explain what I'm doing and ask for directions and get people to help me with food and hitchhiking and whatever. So.
There is this perception that French people can be rude and somewhat pretentious. I don't know if that's the word will come to me. For people that, 1, don't speak their language, or 2, even speak their language poorly. Like if you make an attempt at it and like you're just so far off base, they'll just come back at you with English and like kind of just like look down on you. Was that your experience at all?
So I think, because I definitely run into that stereotype, right? But I think it's more of like the cities that are really like that. And I spent most of it in villages and like tiny mountain towns. And I definitely found that not to be the case. I was pleasantly surprised. People were super helpful. They were very happy to speak, my rudimentary French with me. Not everyone spoke English, but people would always try if I needed it. I got really good at charades. I had people invite me into their homes, people feed me, and we'd sit across the table and just like talk at each other in whatever language we could. And I was pleasantly surprised with how friendly and like open and welcoming people were, especially as a solo female traveler. You never really know what you're gonna get.
Sure.
But I had a really good time, and I would always try first with French as like a kind of, to be polite and like not be entitled. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, you should speak English.
Yeah.
So I would try with French as much as I could, but it does run out eventually.
Yeah.
What is it like from town to town? Like how many days are you going between towns?
Mhm.
How many miles, kilometers are you going between towns?
It varies really wildly. So the northern, I think he's trying to get your cup.
Oh.
The
we don't
first,
need more.
I'd say like
Okay.
700 kilometers, you're pretty close to towns sort of every couple of days. You'll have something accessible. And towns vary wildly in definition as well. Like a town might be, or a village might be like 7 houses and someone like sells cheese out of their basement or something.
Pause right there real quick.
Mhm.
When you say the first 700, are you talking starting from the southwest or from the northeast?
From the northeast.
Okay.
Yeah, so I went southbound, so started at the German border and worked my way, southwest.
Okay.
Not to sidetrack you too much,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
is that, I know it's so new, is that the direction that most people go? The few people have gone?
Yes, most people do it southbound, but it's very easily done in either direction.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good trail either way, and it doesn't really change your weather window, which
Okay.
is cool.
Yeah.